Hi, and welcome to Season 2 of That's Ruddy Mysterious, a podcast of short tales about true mysteries. What created the Potomsky Crater? Who was involved in the 1963 Great Train Robbery? I'm not going to solve those mysteries, but they'll be interesting to learn about. I'm your host, Kelly with an I. Transcripts and references for all episodes can be found at that'sruddymysterious.wordpress.com. No apostrophe and no exclamation point. Today's tale is about the Joyita. The Joyita was a ghost ship found abandoned on November 10, 1955. Captain E.L. James, harbor master at Suba, told the Kansas City Times she was a very buoyant vessel, very heavily planked and insulated with 5-inch slabs of cork for fish refrigeration in all 3 holds. She also had a number of empty drums in the hold. The vessel would never sink unless she broke up. I just can't understand why everybody would have abandoned her. The Joyita was a pleasure yacht built in 1931. She was built in Los Angeles for film director Roland West. West named the vessel for his estranged wife, actress Jewel Carmen. Joyita means little jewel in Spanish. The Joyita was 69 feet or just over 21 meters long. It was a little over 17 feet or 5.2 meters beam or wide, and its draft, or the distance from the waterline to the hull, was a little over 7.5 feet or 2.3 meters. The Joyita weighed 47 tons. It had a cedar hull and the holds had been lined with cork. In all, there were a little over 635.5 cubic feet or 18 cubic meters of cork installed in the hull for refrigeration. In 1936, the Joyita was purchased by Milton E. Beacon. He made a lot of trips to Mexico, and in 1939 and 1940 it went to the Golden Gate International Expedition, which was held in San Francisco, California, in the United States. In 1941, the Joyita was purchased by the U.S. Navy, and its name was changed to Yard Patrol Boat YP-108. At this time, YP-108 patrolled the waters of Hawaii's Big Island. In 1943, YP-108 ran aground and had serious damage. It was desperately needed because of World War II, so it was repaired and returned to service. In 1946, YP-108 was stripped of its Navy equipment and sold to a private owner who changed its name back to Joyita. In 1948, the Joyita got 2 new engines and the hull was outlined with a cork lining for extra buoyancy. Because of the cork lining, the Joyita was considered to be unsinkable. In 1952, the Joyita was sold to its final owner, Dr. Catherine Luumala, who lent it out to Captain Thomas Henry Dusty Miller often. Captain Miller used the Joyita for chartered trade, shipping, and fishing expeditions. On October 3, 1955, the Joyita set sail from Apia, a port in western Samoa, bound for the Tuvalu Islands. It was a 270-mile, or a little over 434.5 kilometers, trip across the Pacific Ocean. The voyage should have taken no longer than 48 hours. The Joyita was set to sail on October 2nd, but the port engine clutch failed, delaying the start of the voyage by a day. Despite this failure, Captain Miller opted to continue the trip with only 1 engine. The Joyita was carrying 4 tons of cargo, including timber, medical supplies, food, and 80 empty oil drums. The 69-foot boat was captained by Captain Dusty Miller. There was a 16-member crew aboard, along with 9 passengers. The passengers included Dr. Alfred Dennis Andy Parsons, who was a government official, a copra buyer, and a couple with 2 children aged 11 and 3. When the Joyita hadn't arrived by October 6th, it was reported missing. No distress call had ever been received. A search and rescue team from New Zealand searched for the Joyita for 6 days between December 6th and 12th, but found nothing. They searched approximately 100,000 square miles, or just under 258,999 square kilometers of the Pacific Ocean. On November 10, 1955, 37 days after the Joyita's voyage began, it was discovered over 600 miles, or over 970 kilometers off course. The merchant ship Tuvalu discovered the Joyita north of the Fiji island of Vanuatu in the South Pacific Ocean. The Joyita was listing so heavily to its port side that the deck rails were dipping in and out of the water. The boat was listing at a 45-degree angle. The boat was completely empty of both people and cargo. The radio was tuned to 2182 kHz, the International Distress Channel. The port engine clutch and auxiliary pump were both disassembled and unconnected. The boat was running on only one engine. All of the clocks aboard had been stopped at 10:25. The lights were on, indicating that whatever occurred happened at night. The logbook, sextant, and other navigational equipment were missing, as were the guns. All 3 lifeboats and the 1 dinghy were missing. There had not been enough life jackets on board for all 25 people aboard. The bridge had been smashed by something and was covered with a canvas awning. This may have served as protection from the sun, indicating that someone was on the boat after the bridge had been smashed. The windows had also been smashed. The deckhouse windows were broken. A doctor's bag was found open on the deck. It contained a scalpel, stethoscope, and bloody bandages. The 1 working engine had been covered by a mattress. There was enough fuel left to have completed the journey. The power had been completely cut. The Joyita was towed back to Suva and an inquiry was started. The inquiry discovered that there was a clogged drain in the bilges which caused the lower deck to be flooded. There was still enough fuel in the tanks. Barnacle growth on the port side confirmed that the boat had been listing for weeks. The amount of fuel that had been used showed that they had completed about 243 miles or 391 kilometers of the trip before the systems went down. They would have been only about 50 miles or about 80.5 kilometers from Tokelau when whatever event occurred happened. Although the radio worked, some broken cables meant the range was only about 2 miles. The flooded lower decks may have let the passengers and crew think that they were sinking, but the boat was never in danger of this happening because of the cord-lined hull and empty oil drums. With the water in the hull, the engine operator wouldn't have been strong enough to steer the boat. It's likely that a squall knocked the Joyita over, causing the listing. The inquiry accused Captain Miller of recklessness for taking the boat out in the condition it was in. It did not, however, explain what happened to the people on board. The Joyita was in extremely bad condition. A fractured cooling pipe allowed flooding to the bilges. As the boat sank lower, the working engine wouldn't have provided enough power to steer the boat. With the hull full of water, 1 large swell could have been enough to tip the Joyita on its side. After the 1955 incident, the wreckage of the Joyita was repaired and used as a trade vessel again. It once again ran aground and began to be considered unlucky. It was stripped off and sold for pieces until by the 1970s it no longer existed. What happened to the Joyita in 1955? Author David G. Wright's mother's cousin was amongst the lost. He believes that it's possible that the water in the lower decks led people to believe that the boat was sinking, and that they didn't believe the captain when he said the Joyita was unsinkable. Wright believes that the captain may have been forced into a lifeboat using the missing guns. Wright then thinks the people may have drowned or been eaten by sharks. The missing navigation equipment supports this theory. The theory also says that a leak from a corroded pipe, which hadn't been noticed for a long time, became overwhelming during the trip. The leak would have started around 9 p.m. on the second night of the trip, and there would have been 9 hours of darkness left, leading the crew to not be able to find the leak. Wright believes that if this had happened during the daytime, the outcome may have been different. Wright has another theory as well. He believes that it's possible that Captain Miller was hurt, which is why there were bloody bandages in the bag. He may have been unable to explain to the people on board that the boat was unsinkable. The people may have then fled in fear that they were sinking, but not before first emptying the cargo trying to stay afloat. They may have believed their SOS was just unanswered, not that it never got received, because they wouldn't have been aware of the limitations of the broken radio. This theory also says that if the event had happened during the day, the crew may have been better able to assess the situation and the outcome may have been different. Wright said, "The evidence that the Commission of Inquiry heard ought to have been sufficient for them to have been able to resolve the whole case, and it remains a puzzle why they didn't." Rob and Mom bought the remains of the Joyita in 1962. They believe that there was a mutiny on the Joyita. They say that a storm flooded the boat and the engine was too weak to get to their destination, or it was too much for the crew. After a struggle with injuries, the crew decided to abandon ship. This theory is supported by the bloody bandages and flooded lower decks. There are some other theories. Some believe that pirates killed the passengers and crew and stole all of the cargo. Others say that Captain Miller was attempting an insurance scheme. World War II had just ended, so some blame the Japanese. Some believe that the passengers and crew were kidnapped by a Soviet submarine. There's no evidence for any of these theories, however. What happened to the passengers and crew of the Joyita? What happened to the cargo she was carrying? Why wasn't the inquiry able to resolve the case? What do you think? Thanks for listening to today's episode of That's Ruddy Mysterious. I'm your host, Kelly with an I. If you enjoyed this episode, leave a review and follow That's Ruddy Mysterious to be updated about new episodes. Tune in next Tuesday for another thought-provoking tale.